Hi everybody, Religious Fanboy here again. Today we are doing the Anime Diva lesson video for Shonen Maid episode 1, titled Those Who Do Not Work Shall Not Eat. The key themes that stood out to me were like the topics and themes that stood out to me were the kind of the idea of pursuing distractions, specifically the doing of good works, and throwing ourselves into doing those in order to distract us or provide distraction from dealing with rougher parts of our spiritual walk with Christ, um, in relationship with God, and a willingness to ask for help and allowing ourselves to be helped by God and other people. That last one was main theme, and the main thing that we'll be talking about today in the video. This is actually there were some reworkings, but this is actually a sermon I've given specifically this most recent other reworking of this I gave at Without Ceasing at Greenville. The passage for this message is Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 through 30. This is the New Living Translation I have typed up on my notes. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. During our lives, we will face many different obstacles. The enemy will try to attack us and tear us down, and we will face, but not all hardships or stresses are just simply attacks from the enemy, but they are things that God is able to use to challenge us and stretch us and help us to grow closer to Him. During my first semester at Greenville, it was especially rough dealing with feeling like things that were problems before had been magnified. On top of that was getting used to living on my own and those feelings and the struggle and hardships and restlessness that I was experiencing led to me being very, honestly, pretty angry at God at times. Because I desired for God and had the expectation that if I had prayed and asked Him to remove my burdens, that He would remove them in ways that that went along with my expectations of what that would have looked like, and that I would not have problems if I asked Him for help. During this time, one of the questions that might come to us and that I had asked myself and others during that time is, if God wants what's best for us, why does He not take away our burdens when we ask Him to? The answer to this is, God does not promise to simply take away our burdens. He promises to replace our heavy burdens with His light burdens. God, my first talking point is, God wants us to surrender our burdens. God wants everyone who is suffering, overworked, and stretched too thin to surrender their burdens and afflictions to Him. No good father takes pleasure in the suffering of their children. God cares more about the relationship we have with Him than the work we do for Him. Ministry should not be something done and fulfilled by our own energy, because it's not us that we are supposed to be glorifying through our ministry and worship. My second talking point is, our burdens are heavy and earthly. A prideful pursuit to be in control is not worth being crushed with unnecessary burdens such as stress and guilt. Being willing to surrender our burdens does not mean we have to be willing. Does mean we have to be willing to swallow our pride and give up control to God. If a student in algebra class said that he was having a really hard time applying the order of operations in math problems, and told his teacher this, she would not tell him, since you are having a hard time, you do not have to do the homework. Instead, she would sit down and help walk him through the problem, so that when he was working on it for homework at home, and when it came time to the test, he'd be ready and prepared by being better equipped to answer the question. In the first in this episode of Shonen Maid, Chihiro and his mom both strongly value their independence and this led to both of them overworking themselves and without giving themselves the proper time to relax from their works as to help so that they were able to function in a healthy way. This is very unhealthy and unnecessary to give a desire of independence a greater importance than our health and emotional state. If your pride is what keeps keeps you from surrendering, from crippling and unnecessary burdens, then um and with swallowing your pride as shown in the episode, um like where Chihiro, there were times where we saw him working and how he had this mindset of, oh, like, oh no, these negative, like he felt the need to shake off negative feelings and focus on working out of a desire to kind of get force himself up and over the morning processes instead of being willing to go through them. Um, and though those distractions, when we are in seasons of restlessness and we don't see an end to them, I am fully aware and know from experience how strong a desire it is to seek for any bit of distraction or bit of temporary comfort just because you feel like you might feel like all you have are questions to answers that you don't even know how to go about finding the answers. And um but and we can be frustrated because we feel like God, and it's easy to be frustrated because we feel like in those really hard times that God isn't helping us, and we might feel like we might have the feeling that we can no longer feel God's presence at that time. Um, but we need to trust in God that He can take away the unnecessary burdens that we put on ourselves when we desire to be in control of the situation. And uh, and just embrace the freeing notions of admitting that God's in control and that we aren't meant to be, and having peace in that, and trusting that even in our seasons of restlessness, even when we feel we are at our lowest points, we might not see reprieve from those hardships at the moment, but we can remember and continue to be faithful in knowing that that God is with us and that He loves us unconditionally. My third talking point is God's burdens are easy and light. When I was originally preparing for this, developing this sermon, I looked up this passage in the Greek interlinear translations using from Bible Hub, and the Greek word translated to easy. I found one of those English synonyms for that Greek word to be really interesting. Two of the words I thought were pretty understandable synonyms, being gentle and pleasant. But one that I found particularly interesting was the synonym that was listed as useful. Um, the word useful. Um, and I think this is a good reminder for the burdens and the trials that God calls us to rejoice in, because though they may be on their problem, they are uncomfortable and might be hard and painful for us. If we are able to remain faithful and lean on God in those moments, we will continue to grow and be stronger in our faith and be better equipped to combat the enemy and withstand hardships when they occur. The burdens of death and temptations are things that Jesus has already overcome. When we surrender our burdens and hardships to Him, God takes away the stress, guilt, and negative emotions that those situations have afflicted us with. This does not mean that the deadlines or the burdens will go away. It means that since we have given God control over these things, We no longer have to stress about them because we have given God control over these things by surrendering them to Him. This does not mean we don't have to work. It means we can continue to work free from the panic and stress that can be the effects of having to face these hardships. God does not promise to take away our burdens. He promises to replace our earthly and heavy burdens with His light ones. When we practice surrendering our control over our hardships to God, we are able to grow deeper in our faith and our trust in God's plan. Okay. With that being said, I'm gonna do a silent prayer. But there's just a little bit of silence before the video ends, where people can, and as I watch this when it premieres, and you are more than welcome. Any Christians are more than welcome to take part in communion during this time. I don't have elements with me right now. In recording this. But also I want to invite this short remainder of our time together this week for this time of prayer to just lift up any burdens we have or just any things that are bothering us and just weighing on our hearts during these times. And with that being said, we're gonna have about a minute and a half, or at least 30 seconds for silence and prayer if you feel led, and communion for Christians who feel led to partake of that as well. But yeah. And with that being said, uh, and with that being said, may God be with you, and I will see you next week. Bye.